Hello, we're the Simon family. My name is Steve Simon, and this is my wife Donna and her son Jake. And we're here today. We're nervous, but we're here today. We were asked to provide some testimony and talk a little bit about a story that we have that might be relevant to other people. Maybe people can get some inspiration from it. That is our faith and our being at peace in life based on certain circumstances. And this pretty much the entire year, Jake has been hospitalized in some capacity or another. Donna will speak more about that. I'm originally from the state of Ohio, a retired school teacher, moved to the Villages about 8 years ago. And I was I guess, an intellectual Christian early in my life. And I believed in God. I believed in Easter and Christmas and the whole thing. But I really probably wasn't, I hadn't accepted Christ into my life until about 2005. A person that was close to me and witnessed my acceptance. And when this happened for me personally, I felt a tremendous, like a weight was lifted off of my shoulders. I felt at peace with things, and with life. I always, by profession, I'm an athlete. I'm an ex-coach. I taught health and phys ed. I was a vocational education teacher. So in the coaching and athletics, when you come up into pressure situations, you can't lose your cool. You can't panic at that situation. Now, you have to be able to think clearly. I think that's helped in our lives at times, particularly this past year. But what's helped the most, I think, is our faith in God. I joined New Covenant Methodist Church, and a year after I arrived here in 2012, and got to know Pastor Harold and some of the other church people. Went to Israel 3 times with the church, and then I thought I was probably going to spend the rest of my life as a single man, as I moved here as a single person. But as the fate and the Lord would have it, I kind of, in a last gasp effort, I went on Match.com. And the very first person that I was matched up with was that lady right there. And in order for me to talk to her, I had to spend $68.97. As a matter of fact, I have my credit card statement. Try not to get my credit card number. But I have my credit card statement showing it's $68.97. But as it's turned out, it's probably the best $68.97 I ever spent.
I don't know about that.
She's well worth it. So.
Sometimes not.
Anyway. We got married, and so the rest is history. As a matter of fact,
Pastor Harold
Pastor Harold married us. We even went on our honeymoon with our pastor. Now, how many people can say that? That's kind of a dicey situation at times. To Israel, that's correct. But it was a great trip, and we got to know Pastor Harold and Donna and other people pretty well, and it's helped our faith and feel close to the congregation. So we've been very blessed. We've had no issues. We've traveled around the country several times by car. We went to Hawaii, Israel 3 times. I mean, we've been blessed with good health and everything, except last August, Donna got sick. Had several operations, a little dicey situation, but she's come through fine. She's doing well. Then in January, because Jake is a hydrocephalic, he's got a shunt system in his head that regulates the pressure inside in his brain. And so that system was kind of old, but he had some facial paralysis. And so we found a neurosurgeon in Ocala, and he was going to make some modifications. Well, when that happened, there were some real serious issues that developed, and we'll let Donna talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Donna. And Jake, just a little background. Jake was adopted from Hong Kong when he was 15 months old, and he was born to parents who were very young, 14 and 15, who were using heroin. And he was born hydrocephalic, as Steve said, and born with gastroschisis, which is all of his middle outside. So he went through quite a bit in his first year, so that's a miracle in itself. My life with Jake up until I met Steve has been nothing but a miracle. So we adopted him. The weird thing about that is I never wanted children my whole life. And then when I hit about 35, thought we lived in Hong Kong, and we started hearing about these little babies who didn't have homes, and God hit me like with a 2x4, and I just knew that was the avenue that we needed to take, and not just the little newborn babies that are healthy, but children that wouldn't have a chance of getting into a family. And Jake was one of those, and his sister Corinne was another one with a heart defect. And it was very rare to see boys through the China-Hong Kong adoptions. So fast forward, Jake did pretty well throughout all the years, developmentally, and we had to monitor it a lot because he has tubes and valves that are called shunts in his head, and they go from his head in here and go down into the lung or the stomach. And when he was 12, they malfunction. They start deteriorating after 4 to 8 years, and Jake's were malfunctioning severely and had, at that time, the whole system replaced. No infections or anything, and he had about 13 surgeries total from 12 to 14 years old. So I had been through it with him before as a single mother, and it was not easy, but my testimony there was at the time that without God's grace, I would not have made it through that. I lived in the hospital with him and worked full time. And he pulled through and continued to go on with life with some struggles with some mental and physical disorders. But he graduated from high school, went to a few years college, and this shunt system lasted up until last year. So 14 years is a long time for any of that kind of apparatus in your body to work. So I knew, and when I married Steve and when we were dating, I told him about Jake and about what could happen. And the funny thing is, a lot of the guys I had dated didn't want anything to do with it. So I was very blessed to get such a good man that was willing to take this on with and when. It wasn't really if, it was when it was going to happen. And he took Jake under his wing too. And so having that support, and especially from a good Christian man who gave his whole heart to me and to Jake, was just a miracle in itself. Again, another miracle. The last 2 years, Jake's face started getting droopy and paralyzed. I took him to Orlando a lot, and none of the neurosurgeons or neurologists there would do anything to help him because it was his shunt system in his head and it wasn't failing. They said it was working, but I knew it was failing. So we found a neurologist here in the Villages, and fortunately for us, another miracle, he contacted a neurosurgeon in Ocala that decided that he could probably help Jake. And in January of this year, we met him last year, in January of this year, after much going back and forth, he did Jake's first and second surgery in January to try to fix some of the tubes in his head. Well, from that point on, it wasn't good. It just went downhill. It got worse and worse. And by March 6th, that's a date that sticks in my head, Jake fell. He was very dizzy and multiple fractures of his nose and face, and I picked him up and took him straight into the hospital, and Jake stayed in the hospital from that point until 3 months later he came home. Through all of that, so many miracles happened, so many things happened. I lived in the hospital with him. You know, fortunately, you don't remember it, do you? Do you remember any of it?
Maybe like bits of things, but
but not most of it.
A lot, no.
Yeah. So that's good, because he had all in all 10 surgeries in a very short period of time. He developed through this time, after almost a month in the, not quite, no, 2 weeks in the hospital, severe infection in his lungs, and they had to take the whole system out from head to chest to belly. The tubes, everything had to come out. He went into the ICU, was in there for 6 weeks with 3 catheters coming out of his head, pretty much non-functional. He grew worse and worse from there. On Easter weekend, we got a call on Good Friday from his neurosurgeon, and
yeah, that was a dicey weekend. The neurosurgeon said they basically have done what they can do. It's kind of up to God's will or something, whether he's going to make it, because he was in trouble. And so when you lay there at night and you put the cell phone next to your bed, waiting on a phone call, that's not a pleasant thing, because at that time Donna couldn't go to the hospital because of the COVID virus. So you can imagine, here it is, your son lying in the hospital 50 miles away, and you can't be there, and he's close to death. So what we did is we just prayed. You know, Lord, will be done. We're going to be at peace with whatever happens. We have faith, and that helped tremendously. But that was a very difficult weekend. But
this is, just to get an idea, I don't know if you can see this, Austin. This is Jake when he went into the ICU after his surgery, some of his surgeries. And look at him now, if that's not a miracle. He not only developed the infection in his chest, and he got a thoracotomy where they went in through the ribs and cleaned it all out. It went up into his brain, inside of his brain, and that's the Easter weekend that happened. It's called ventriculitis, where his whole brain was infected, and they didn't think he was going to make it, and I couldn't go see him unless he was actually dying. So I have to tell you, through that, the support and the love and the care that we had from so many people, our friends and Facebook and church, and I was in a ladies' Bible study here, and they came around me, and I don't think I could have made it without that and without God. I got mad at him a lot. I got mad at God a lot, and would just tell him I wasn't sure about this whole thing, and but people just sent us so many cards and meals and things to help us. It was a miracle. And I say to anybody who is a member of this church or anywhere, get close to your church. Get close. It's your family. And we don't have any family here. And that became our rock along with God. We couldn't go to church at the time. Pastor Harold and Donna would text us, and I remember him saying, you just have to give it up. You have to give it over. You can't do anything. It's in God's hands. So that was just a total miracle. In that time, he got a feeding tube and more surgeries, and by the middle of May, the infection was finally clearing up. I remember at some points, Jake couldn't move even, or open his eyes, and the nurse would say, Jake, do you know who that is on FaceTime? Can you hear her? And she'd say, squeeze my hand if you could hear me, and Jake would squeeze her hand. And I can't tell you the joy and the hope that I had in that. And it was just a day at a time. We had to take everything a day at a time. I couldn't look ahead. I couldn't think about what his future would be like. Nothing. We just had to deal with it, the here and now. And at that point, they were able to put the whole shunt system back in, major surgery, and they let me come in for that. And from there, he started getting better. Went into the regular part of the hospital, out of ICU. They let me stay there. They didn't let anybody stay in the hospital, but they let me stay with Jake. He couldn't swallow, was in diapers. And I would wake up every 10 minutes with him by his bedside and suction him because he couldn't breathe, because he couldn't swallow. And I thank God for that, because it's only the Lord that carried me through that. It was just grace. We have a motto in our family. Jake's had this for how long now? About 4 years, 5 years? About more. Never give up. Our motto has been never give up. And we said that to each other so many times, didn't we?
Yep.
Never give up. Every nurse would ask, "Oh, Jake, what's that?" "Oh, I love that motto." We just survived on gratitude for every little step that he could make. I remember too, around that time, when Jake started getting better, Pastor Harold came back and did some of our video church services. And his first one he did, and he told his story about him and Donna and his accident, what they went through, which is a parallel. And his was all things new. The sermon was all things new. I'll never forget, because we started a ladies' Bible study when Jake was in the hospital, called All Things New, and I zoomed in from the hospital to meet with these ladies and get encouragement and study the Bible with them. And All Things New is so appropriate, because for Jake, and not remembering anything that happened, it's all new now. So I had I don't know how we're doing time-wise, but while Jake was in the hospital, we had a Bible verse that I read almost every day, and I was hoping Jake could read it, and I hope you can hear him, but if you want to hold it up, maybe you could read it. It's one of my favorite all-time Bible verses anyway, but during this and through this has become so powerful. It's Isaiah 30 through 31.
Okay. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall.
Excellent.
But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint.
That's awesome, bud. And that's exactly what happened. The Lord carried Jake and all of us when we were weak, and when I thought I was losing hope, and here we are today. We're still in recovery, and Jake has one more procedure next week, and we hope that'll help one more thing, and then we can get his feeding tube out. And I just have to thank Donna for letting us come here and tell you this story, because there were times when I didn't have hope or joy, but somehow God showed me each day miracles that brought hope and joy. And it's not been easy, but we just deal with it, and we know that things will get better, and that's life. Life happens on life's terms. And if we don't have the rock of our God and of church and of Jesus walking with me, then I really don't have anything. And if I have time, I don't know how we're doing, I have one more verse I wanted to read, and this is from the Help for Hurting Parents, which is through our church as well. The verse is, "The lions grow weary and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good things." Psalm 34:10. When you reach out to him, look for him with all your heart and stay close to his side. You can keep going, because he will provide what you need. He will fill you up with spiritual and emotional nourishment and sustain you. He'll give you good things that you can't produce on your own ability: lasting strength, invincible faith, solid trust, genuine forgiveness, enduring love, restless, relentless hope, and the peace of his presence. And the prayer I'd like to close with is, O God, in my fatigue and weariness, urge me to continue to seek you. Prompt me to stay close, move me to draw near, especially when I don't feel like it. Remind me that if I do, I'll never ever lack for what I need for the journey. I'll lack no good thing, all for your glory. Amen. Thanks for letting us share.
Yep. All things new again. New shunt system, new you.
Thank you.